That's me. I just kind of spread out. And I think that's yeah. Okay.
Well, you didn't shoot though.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Arlington Public Schools regular board meeting. We want to have everybody feel welcome. We're glad you're here. We're going to call this meeting to order, and we're going to start with our land acknowledgement by Dr. Sweeting.
We honor the first peoples of these lands by acknowledging that the area in which we gather is within the traditional territory of the Stillaguamish tribe of Indians. The Stillaguamish people have inhabited these lands and waters since time immemorial, and their ancestors have remained in this territory to this day. The Stillaguamish people have continued to practice the traditional ways of their ancestors of fishing, hunting, and gathering. The Stillaguamish tribe has had these lands and cultural traditions passed on to them by their ancestors who believe that everything has a spirit and that they are caretakers of these lands and waters.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeting. Next, we'll have everyone please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please take roll?
Director Ray,
I'm here.
Director Kelly. Here. Director Kingman,
He's absent and excused.
President Levesque,
Present,
Director Knapp,
also absent and excused.
Student Advisor Schroeder,
Here.
Superintendent Sweeting.
Here,
Thank you. Next on the agenda is our approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as proposed?
I make a motion, we approve the agenda as proposed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Madam Clerk, can you please call for a vote?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye. And that is approved. Thank you. Next up is our swearing in of our new student advisor, Mariska Laban. I think she's joining us via Zoom.
we're very happy tonight. We went through a process, an interview process. First students applied and then they interviewed, and Mariska was selected as our student advisor for 2 years. So she'll join us this next year as a junior and remain with us till she's a senior and graduates. And she'll join Kyle, who is been with us for a year and now is going to finish his senior year with us. We're very happy. So Mariska, where are you on? I can see, Mariska, can you unmute? I can see her, Mira.
She said she was having a little difficulty, but that she was almost there.
Okay,
Hold on, I have a message coming in.
so while we're waiting, Kyle, would you like to share, just give us a highlight of being a student advisor while we wait for this technical fix?
Absolutely, I would love to. I would say the highlight of being a student advisor would be the ability to give input and ask questions and gain a better understanding of the inner workings of our district and be able to work with the wonderful board that we have and see the leadership in kind of behind the scenes that we don't really get to see in the classroom or inside of our school.
Thank you, Kyle. We really value the voice of our students. I mean, this is why we exist. This is why Arlington Public Schools is here, is to serve the students and to remove barriers, increase access so that you can learn and achieve to the best, and to have to graduate and to become lifelong learners.
It's a good reminder just to sit and be calm and relax and take some good deep breaths.
I'm just wondering if she were to call us, if she were to call my cell phone, and then I would put it on speaker. And then everybody should be able to hear her. That might work. And then we don't have to go through the system. We just use the phone as a.
Hello?
Mariska, is that you?
Yes, it is. Hello.
Hello, success.
Hi, I'm so sorry about that.
Okay, well, we're just happy that you're with us now, and we are going to swear you in so that come back, join us at the next board meet. But and I know you have family, so as soon as we're done and I swear you in, then you could introduce who's on the Zoom family. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So will you please raise your right hand? And
yes.
And I can't push this speaker and this piece of paper. So, oh, good. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm going to do this in phrases. I, Mariska Laban, do solemnly swear.
I, Mariska Laban, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States.
And the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington.
And the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington.
And the provisions of the charter and ordinances of Snohomish County.
And the provisions of the charter and ordinances of Snohomish County.
And that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties of.
And that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties of.
The office of Student Advisor to the Board of Directors.
The office of Student Advisor to the Board of Directors.
Arlington Public Schools according to law to the best of my ability.
Arlington Public Schools according to law to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, you did it perfect.
Thank you.
So Mariska, we're very happy you're going to be with us and give us your thoughts and help us to make better decisions for the next 2 years. Would you introduce the family that you have on Zoom supporting you?
Yes, I'm not exactly sure who is all there, but I am aware that my mother and father are there. I'm assuming Miss Yvonne is here. And I believe one of my uncles. I'm sorry, it's hard to take a guess on who's all here with the phone call.
That's neat. I'm sure they're proud of you and we're proud of you, and we look forward to the partnership that we're going to have. I don't know, maybe Mary or any other board member, do you have any words?
I want to say welcome aboard. We're excited to hear from you and learn from your perspective. And thanks for joining us via Zoom tonight. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for helping me make this work while I can't be there.
All right. Take care, Mariska. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And I'm sure we'll get pictures later, right, Gary? Yeah. Oh, good.
Her picture's out in the hall, so.
Okay, next up on our agenda is our approval of our minutes. And we have our regular meeting minutes from July 11th.
I make a motion, we approve the regular meeting minutes from July 11th, 2022.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes from July 11th. Madam Clerk, can we take a vote?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye. Next up, we have our public comment portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who has signed up in advance to speak tonight? Okay, then we'll skip ahead to the next item on our agenda, and that's our public hearing. We will now open the public hearing regarding the adoption of the 2022-23 annual budget. And I'd like to introduce our Executive Director of Financial Services, Ms. Gina Zutenhorst.
Good afternoon. Happy to be here, ready to share our proposed budget, and I'm going to share my screen. Or it's not the, yes, it is the proposed. Okay, which presentation am I on? I'm not seeing what I need to see. Let's see if this lets me get to it. No, it is not. Oh, good. It was there for a second. Oh, but that's not on my screen. I might need you to stay standing up here. That was too great. So thank you. Yes, I'm here to talk about our proposed 2022-23 budget. And always when we are talking about our budget, we want to be aligned to taking it back down to our core values, our mission statement. And we do a vision aligned budgeting. So our primary mission is to educate, prepare, and inspire students to graduate and seek their full potential as lifelong learners. And for financial purposes and the budget, we fall most closely under strategic plan goal 3, resource stewardship. And that is in regards to securing quality resources, people, time, money, and property, and aligning those resources to support equitable learning and achievement for students by making decisions using an equity lens and data. And then also within the goal 3, there are 3 subsets within that where we talk about what those are. 3.1, allocate resources to maximize student learning. That's first and foremost, that is primary. And then 3.2, maintain, improve, and replace buildings and equipment. And then 3.3, invest community resources prudently. And amongst all 3 of those, one cannot necessarily be at the cost of the other at times. And also, I always like to mention that out of all the strategic plan goals that we have, the areas, the 4 areas, the one that is finance related really exists to support the other 3 goals. And then we always talk about the values that guide our budget decisions. And this is work that the board took on upon themselves to talk about the values and put those and embody those into board policy. And there's a good list there that talks about the things that are part of our budget decisions and guidance on spending. But primarily what I want to highlight here too on the way is where we're talking about fund balance in the middle there, and it, with yellow highlighting, it talks about invest in appropriate internal controls over financial operations and maintain compliance with board policy for minimum fund balance while also allowing for flexibility in times of emergency. So we have been talking about our fund balance and coming into this fiscal year, and Frank, previous board direction has been that it is quite possible that we would be going into fund balance this coming year, largely due to considering the pandemic as an emergency and a time that might be appropriate to be dipping in to our fund balance. And we'll talk more about that. So the board has been hearing from me on this presentation, the previous meeting in July when we talked through our initial look at our budget. So just educating everyone that's listening and our board continuing to hear this message, we have 5 major funds that we are budgeting for. These are state-defined legal separate entity funds. And we budget in the format that's called an F-195. The state defines that and names all districts budget in this format, the F-195. So the 5 major funds are general fund, capital projects fund, debt service fund, ASB fund, Associated Student Body Fund, and then transportation vehicle fund. And briefly, what each of those funds is for. The general fund is where all of the action happens. That's our operating budget. That's where all of our employees are paid from, salaries and benefits, all of the materials, supplies, and equipment that operate and make a district run. The ASB fund is a separate fund for Associated Student Body activities, extracurricular activities, clubs, and athletics. And then our debt service fund is used to pay principal and interest on any bonds that have been issued to finance school construction and or renovation, major renovation projects. Our capital projects fund is that's where if we're letting large contracts for building a new school or making major renovations like replacing a roof or the things that are doing and currently with our capital projects fund, we have to do that through capital. And then transportation vehicle fund, we only are able to use transportation vehicle fund money to buy buses. So anytime you're buying a bus, it must go through transportation vehicle fund. So it's just a unique subset that the state requires. We're going to move into talking about our general fund budget in more detail. And here is I'll enlarge that, a summary, because the F-195 document is a really big, complicated 280-page document. So this is a summary for all of you to see. So what I have done here is set the revised budget for 21-22 and put that up against the budget for 22-23. And then the right column shows the difference between those two and a percentage change. And so you can see that we believe we're going to start 22-23 with a $10.2 million fund balance. And we estimate our revenues to come in at 93.8 million, closer to 93.9 million. And our expenditures are budgeted to come in at just over 100 million. And that shows us ending with an ending fund balance of about $4 million. And that is a dip under. It does go down into our minimum fund balance. Our minimum fund balance should be around 7.8, 7.9 million. And so with this, we will be temporarily for next year budgeting to go lower than that. And we'll show our future year forecasts and realignment of that for future years. But for now, that is where we're at. Some districts do use, for ours, we are use and minimum fund balance is 1 month's average operating expenditures. So if we take the 100 million divided by 12, that would be about where we would estimate or try to land for our ending fund balance. Some districts use a 5% measure of minimum fund balance. So taking that of the 100 million and taking 5% of that would be where they would land or try to land for an ending fund balance. So we're not as far off from that as some districts as far as our minimum fund balance policy. I just wanted to point that out. And then here, the staffing summary shows what our budgeted staffing was for 21-22, and then our budgeted staffing FTE for 22-23. And these are staff that are already have been hired. They are not necessarily new hires coming into 22-23. They're hires that we brought on along during 21-22. And so it does show that we are increasing in the staff that we have held. And that is part of our intentional move also, because of what we've been experiencing with the pandemic and the exceptional behaviors that we have been hearing about from schools and the needs that they have, that we maintain adults and teachers and people that are working with our students in order to help mitigate some of that and help students keep making big strides to accelerate learning. Our enrollment is listed. 21-22 enrollment budget was 5,265. What we actually came in with for average full-time student enrollment for 21-22 was 5,247. So very close to our budgeted enrollment number, which was great. For 22-23, we are estimating 5,500, and that was in collaboration with the enrollment demographic company that we utilized to support estimating those numbers, and also board approved figures that we took on in February. So some key points: our estimated beginning fund balance, 10.2 million. And we are coming off of the initial influx of funds from the McCleary Fund decision, which changed a multitude of things for schools all across the state and created for many a balloon in our fund balances. And we have been working towards spending that down over the course of years intentionally. We have been working on that, haven't tried to keep this large fund balance, but that's been where we've ended up. And the 22-23 budget, we're heading into that further spend down of fund balance. So we're really actually going to get there now. And we're going to need to take more drastic actions to change the trend of our expenditures heading into 23-24. And that's the second year out from next year's budget. But in reality, and I'll talk more about this later in my presentation, we're going to start working on that now. We will be making changes currently to get in a better spot coming into the next fiscal year. Our future year spending will still need to be reduced by significant amounts. So what is included in this year's budget? We had salary increases of 7.5%, and that is per collective bargaining agreements. And it also is tied to whatever the legislature approved for cost of living adjustment coming out of their session in April. They used a 5.5%. And then we had already negotiated 2% plus IPD with our groups. So that is the percentage that is included in the budget that is being used to calculate what our people are going to cost us this next year. And our Learn to Return funding is going to continue. We are in the process of applying for that now, and we should be bringing that to the board for acceptance We think we'll be getting 2/3 of what we received last year. And this is great news for our health team as they proceed to continue to deal with just the challenges that they're facing and changes that have to do with the pandemic. So we're also staying the course with the programs and classes that we have had and at higher staffing levels. Our general fund levy is 9.5 million. That's for that will be levied in 2023. And our capital fund levy is 6.281554. And then we're going to look some more at the details of our general fund revenues and expenditures. And I find that it's most useful for a summary look to look at it in a pie chart format, because you can see the breakdown of what our budgeted revenues are coming from. So state and general special dollars fund, or state general and state special dollars fund 80% of district programs. So that's the green state general purpose. That's our state apportionment funds, 64,000 or 64%, sorry. And then the state special purpose is 16%. And together that's 80%. So state general and state special dollars fund 80% of district programs. Our local taxes support 10%, 10% right there, the blue sliver, and the local non-tax and other funds, 2%, and federal dollars fund 6% of our programs. And that is shifting. Our federal dollars in our previous year was a larger percentage, and now it is shifting back downward, and that's because we're not getting in the ESSER funds anymore. And there were other one-time dollars, emergency connectivity fund, $750,000 there. That was one-time funds, that's federal funds. So there's a shift there. And then here we are looking at the general fund revenues dollar amounts. So there you see that federal special purpose that we were talking about. There's that big decrease. We had a budget of 9.8 million in federal revenues, and now for next year it's down to 5.1 million or so. That's ESSER funds, but it's also our child nutrition programs. That is during the time that we were able to provide meals for no charge for all students. That was because of waivers that we received from the federal government and additional funding that we received from the federal government to support that. So that is also changing going into 22-23. So that's another reason for the dip in federal funds there. Here is the same picture pie chart for the general fund expenditures side. And you can see the largest piece, 57% of expenditures. And then the ESSER 1% makes up 58% of the budget is for basic education. And then support services, which is this purple pie piece of the pie, that is 17% of our expenditures. And then special education, the orange piece, 16% of our expenditures is for special education needs. And then other programs, we have a number of other programs in there as well. And it's these smaller pieces right along in here, the red, the blue, the little small green. Those are other programs. For example, career and technical education, CTE, or vocational. There's lots of names that those programs have gone under in years past and what it's called currently. And then some of the other categorical programs that we have. That makes up 9%. And then here we're looking at our budgeted expenditures by program. And you can see where the bulk of our expenditures are for our regular instruction. We do still have some federal special ESSER funding budgeted, but that is from smaller pieces of grant funds that we have received that were ESSER, but they were separate from the big chunks that we received initially as our big award through the state. For example, there is a federal special education piece that's ESSER money. That's what's being budgeted under that category going into 22-23. But again, it's a huge decrease from what we would have had in the prior year. So that's a dollar breakout number of the pie chart that you viewed previously. And then here's another look at expenditures by object. So the state defines how we code our expenditures. And the one we looked at previously was by program. This is by object. So it's a good deal more summarized, but it's more, okay, certificated salaries, classified salaries, employee benefits, supplies and materials, purchase services, travel, and then capital outlay. And that's how those are broken out there. And you can see previous year's budget up next to our current budget. And I will also mention that for capital outlay, that we don't actually spend, it's not a $5 million spend there, that we have included $5 million in lease accounting entries there that we've spoken about. That's a new accounting requirement that has been required for implementation this year. And so we are needing to budget for that for next year as well. And we are budgeting that. It's not actual dollars that get spent. It is book entries only that we're required to do. So we are summarizing that by putting it in the capital outlay category to keep it separate from the other cost items there. And then we are not budgeting to spend very much at all in capital outlay alone. So travel is another area that is greatly reduced from previous years. We are already lower in travel because of pandemic. We couldn't have as much, and we're trimming that even more. A lot of things are done over Zoom now, so there's less travel there. Our greatest increases are in our staff, in our staffing, and our salaries and the benefits associated with that. 88% of our budget of all of our expenditures is for our people. And then we have our supplies and purchased services. Purchased services are items of an intangible nature. So it would be subscriptions, it would be utilities, it would be things that are not, that you can't really touch. And then supplies and materials are harder items. So everything that's in the classroom, staplers, hole punchers, things like that. Some people would say, oh, that's equipment, but equipment is defined as, for capital outlay, it would be capital outlay only if it's greater than $5,000 as a piece of equipment unit per 1 unit piece. Our materials, supplies, and other costs. This is a slide also that the state asks us to put in our budget presentations. And it just basically shows for the regular instruction program, the alternative learning program, dropout re-engagement program, and then the district support program, that the MSOC that they estimate that their material, supplies, and other costs that they estimate that they're giving us compared to what we're budgeting. So we're budgeting to spend greater than what the allocation is. And then here is a look at our 4-year budget summary, our multi-year working forecast. So the first column, we've already looked at that in our very first slide where I was showing the summary, but this now is put up against a 4-year outlook. And this is a state required forecast, a summary. And as you can see, 23-24, which is the second year out, we will have to make significant reductions and we will still be low on our fund balance. And then the third year, assuming we've made the appropriate and enough reduction in 23-24, we will have already mostly covered what we would need to reduce for the 24-25 fiscal year. That $2.9 million in red is less than what we spent for 23 or 22-23. So that is the picture. And the fourth year out, we would be back in alignment with what our minimum fund balance should be, with maintaining that average 12-month operating cost, 1 month's average, if I'm saying that right.
Gina, I have a question for you. I'm wondering
Sure.
if other school districts are in the same scenario financially. To me, a 2-year window doesn't seem too extreme. I'm kind of thinking that's not as bad as a 5-year plan, right? Where it would take that long to kind of recover. So my question is, do you know if other districts are similar in what you're seeing? And number two, do you have any faith knowing that 80% or something comes from a state level? Do you think that Olympia would do anything to help the schools to offset what you're going to see is going to happen?
Yes, I do think that there's some mitigating factors that are possibly on the horizon. And I think I cover that in a future slide, but I can touch on it now. If they change the regionalization factor, if they adjust how they're doing that, because right now our revenues are decreasing by automatically 1%. They go down to 15%. I think I've got it listed there for 22-23. And it's a factor that influences how much revenue we get from the state. So they're gradually decreasing that and decreasing it. If they adjust how they're doing that, that should help us. We have neighboring districts that are just not very far down the road that were in the 18% or the 24% starting out with the regionalization. So they were already ahead of us when it comes to that. As far as needing to make reductions, I am aware that other districts are already making those reductions, may have already done them, some last year and some this year. And that means that they impacted the classroom during a really tough time to be able to be doing that. Some districts did not spend their ESSER funds during those years that they were reducing, and now they're spending their ESSER funds to help them continue on. Some districts I know are also, I've been speaking with other finance directors in various districts that I'm connected with, and they also indicate a concern with fund balance needing to go down with the increasing costs that they're experiencing. So everybody is needing to realign. Some districts are in better situation than others. I haven't fully analyzed everybody's figures. I did look at one recently where I said they're going down too, and a neighbor. So hopefully that gives you a little perspective of me, what I look at, and how I'm gauging and measuring what we're doing compared to our neighbors.
And it does mean, and I think you're going to get into it a little bit more, Gina, but the idea that this has to be a whole system, a comprehensive approach to reductions. And so, and that has to be in staffing. So that needs to be all groups. And so it's we have those decisions that we have to inform people about reductions before a certain date, and we need to be, and we will be prepared, for that in spring.
So this is a little bit redundant, but it summarizes once more that for the big picture going into 22-23, that the expenditures are going to be greater than we had planned from previous estimates. 5.5% greater than planned in salaries, because previous years we would have used a 2% factor for future years' salaries. Well, now those salaries are budgeting at 7.5%, so that's 5.5% greater than we would have planned from the past. The legislature also increased our revenues using a 5.5 cost of living measure, but everyone should remember that that is not reaching, and it doesn't fully fund us for what that actually costs us. And prototypical school model was adjusted slightly. So the staffing units that they use to generate revenues for us increased a little bit for in the mental, social, emotional health and safety area. And our enrollment budgeted for next year is greater than some of our older forecasts. So that helps. 22-23 expenditures are going to exceed revenues, as you've seen, and our budgeted ending fund balance will be impacted.
And Gina, that 5%, the 5.5% from the state, it's for the average salary, you know, how we have,
Correct.
it's not for, if we pay this amount of money in salaries, they don't just automatically say, well, you're paying this amount, we're going to go 5 times 5. No, it's the average, which we are significantly above.
Correct. And that was
situation.
a change that was made as part of the McCleary law change. They went to average salary that they provided funding under, not commensurate with what the average, the teaching years of experience and education was for our staff in our Arlington. So as we've been sharing, we are temporarily utilizing fund balance during 22-23 induced by the pandemic, and that will sustain operations and instructional programs targeting accelerated learning for 22-23 rather than the big steps that we would have had to take much earlier in the fiscal year for a formal reduction in staff. And we're doing that even though our expenditures are going to exceed our revenues. Our multi-year budget summary, multi-year working forecast. This is just lays out what our minimum fund balance should be, would be if we were doing the 1 month's average operating costs. And that is, we should be at 7.9 and then 7.5. That assumes we've made some reductions, 7.7, assuming we've made reductions, and then 8 million in the 25-26 fiscal year would be the target that we need to be getting towards to be back at our minimum level of reserves. And here's another look at our multi-year forecast ending fund balance compared to the target minimum, just to show you how far we are off or how far we're in compliance with when we get there. So and it's in red, and the percentages are in red, just to indicate where we're at with that, and that future reductions will be necessary. And then what could change the picture? Enrollment uncertainty. If our enrollment increases at a greater pace than we are budgeting, that will help. If our enrollment does not increase at the pace that we are budgeting, that will hurt. Our regionalization continues to step down, but if the legislature provides some relief to that, that will help us. Also, a primary priority for many of the group advocates for education is that the legislature needs to do more work in the area of special education funding, and they are not anywhere near, still not anywhere near funding the needs that educational programs need in order to give students the best situation that they can thrive in and learn in and access education. So I know that that's something they're going to be focusing on, and we would hope that that would provide us some relief as well in the form of increased funding. And that's what I just spoke of. Demographics of staff experience also can change over time. So as our population of teaching staff, to the extent that we have more veteran teaching staff and highly educated teaching staff, then our staffing costs us, the district, is more. To the extent that there may be a shift in demographics where our teachers are middle or newer, then that will change our funding picture as well. I'm not saying that's going to happen anytime soon, but and then careful spending. Careful spending in 22-23 will help the district's financial position going into 23-24. So we will be working on trimming any of the discretionary spending where possible, starting now, and doing the work now and throughout next year in order to be able to make those thoughtful and careful, purposeful, and intentional reductions for the budget year to come. So things that we can do now while we're still in 21-22, I wanted to talk about this a little bit more just to be sure to highlight that we are not just going in, just spending what we're spending, knowing that we're going into our reserves. We are going to be working on attritions, retirements. We're going to be looking at each position as they come to look at, can we hold on that right now? Now, not every one can be just not filled for if it's critical to safety, security, legal compliance, or there are positions that are required or supported by our federal grant funding, then those funds have already been earmarked to fund that. Those positions have to be spent on that. Some of the other areas where we'll be looking is replacement cycles for some of our contemplated equipment purchases and maybe delaying a year on some of those needs. Reducing travel, any miscellaneous supplies for meetings, doing with less. And overtime would be an area where we start to see a reduction there. Messaging around spending for the rest of the year and going into next year, we need to heighten the sense of limited resources and that the funds that are being allocated are not just there to spend because they're there. It has to be critical. It has to be super up there on the list of priorities. And we're going to explore additional competitive grant funding and contemplate other areas where revenues can be maximized. So some of those are made available by the state. Some of them are federal funds, some of them are state funds. They're competitive grants that you have to go out and apply for, and you're going up against other districts as well that are also applying for it. So they may or may not award it based on whatever the criteria is. But if there's something out there that we can apply for that isn't going to cost us more than it's worth, sometimes the grants require you to do things and match costs and do more. So that's not what we would want to get too far into. We want support to deal with the challenges that we're already taking on and already facing. And then we're going to evaluate programs more deeply for changes that would result in cost reductions. And we're going to be working on prioritizing areas of reduced spending. And that's where we want to do this work very carefully. And like I've said, work with our leadership team, work with our community, and come to those decisions. So that would result in developing a reduced educational programs and services program for 23-24. And we would be doing that early during 22-23, April, May. And unfortunately, we have to set that groundwork before the legislature is done with what they are doing. So any of the relief may not be available, won't be necessarily available to us yet to make decisions on. I'm going to take a pause because that's the end of the general fund section. And I appreciate our board's engagement, and this is a lot of information. It is every year a lot of information, and our board has been very good stewards and wisely have looked at things and have had questions along the way. And this is the second time that you've heard me go through all of this and have asked your questions. And so I appreciate that. And if you have continuing questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Gina. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can you go back to your slide number 9, where you had the different programs? Oh, you went too far. Not page 9. I think it's slide 9. There.
Revenues
There.
or expenditures?
Yes, that one. I saw special education had a big increase in expenditures. I wanted to know if we have more kids in special ed, or we have more staff, or we're trying to
I
meet
think
different
both.
needs, or
I think both. We have increased students in that area over the course of time. Some districts have said that theirs has declined, but Arlington's has not. And when we have more students, we need more staff, especially when it's special needs students. And depending on their needs, depending on the depth of their needs, that can mean more staff. Also, we have contracted staff. Sometimes we aren't able to hire for high demand positions. Speech language pathologists is one of the primary ones I can think of.
And psychologists, we're
And
struggling right now.
Psychologists. So at times when we aren't able to hire that person ourselves, we have agencies that provide private speech language services, and they allow us to contract with them and use their employees.
There
and
is
the
a
cost
little
is more.
bit for special ed too. The state pays up to 13.5%. Like, so if you're based on the total population in your district, they will pay a separate apportionment up to 13.5%, but we're at 14.8. So there is a gap there. That is one of the legislative areas that other organizations, outside organizations, support organizations of education are pursuing, and educating the legislatures about.
thank you for clarifying. I had one more question about that same slide,
Oh,
if you don't
sorry.
mind going back.
Yeah,
Um,
too far.
was it community services? Community services, can you explain
Yeah.
what that is?
Yes.
I
Community
noticed that went
services.
up too, and I thought that was great.
Yes. That is in the area of the Performing Arts Center is one of the areas that's in there. I forget, there's something else little that we shifted there in our coding and our costs, because we looked at that position and said, that really more fully aligns with the facilities rentals area, the work that's done to provide that service so that all users in our community and manage the rental of our facilities to them after hours or whatever. So I think that was a shift that we made there to put that cost there as more reflective of what that position does.
And do we
It's
have,
not a new position.
do we have the same increase in the revenue for that same category? No.
No.
Okay.
We're looking though for a while, we didn't have a lot of rentals, during the COVID years. So we are increasing that. We're also looking at the fee schedule, and I know that we're working on making sure that we are, reasonable but appropriate fees for the rental services.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so are we ready to talk about the other funds?
Oh, I got a few questions.
Okay,
So I know we chatted after the last presentation. I don't see any significant, really, I don't see any differences in the previous presentation and this one. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Excellent. I just still have some pretty serious concerns about the increase of expenditures compared to revenue. And that we are essentially spending an extra 2 million this year and then projecting next year to reduce 4.5 million. I just have some serious concerns with that. I mean, we've been spending more than we have been getting, so revenues over expenditures. Sorry, the other way around, but I just have some serious concerns with that. And I'm just not sure that I'd going to be able to support a budget that shows that big of a gap, knowing that we have that big of a change to do next year.
Appreciate your comments there.
Yep.
I have those same values and same concerns and realizing that in the alternative that the cost is difficult to quantify at the other side, the impact for the classroom and the people that we would had to draw back on, and that would have had to been done earlier.
Yeah, I think that it's, when you're using the best, the wise feedback and perceptions from others and the needs that we hear from our staff and from our students and our community, during the pandemic, it's just been a challenging time that, the board even so decided that we would stay the course and we did not reduce, at all in staffing. We could have, but we stayed the course to make sure that the kids were, surrounded. So it is hard because that the majority of our budget is people. And so in order to make those cuts, it will involve, in that situation. However, we agree because it's, for the last 5 years, we've had a very, a fund balance that just, it was way over even what our requirement was. So,
Which is fortunate. Any bond rating changes due to our changing in fund balance? Do you anticipate at all?
I can't quite contemplate what that impact would be. Washington State is quite a bit different than a lot of schools across the nation, and Moody's and all those that work with schools, they're aware of the differences. And if we're not selling a bond at the time being also, then there's no impact at all. What else was I going to say about that? The fund balance is a factor, and that's what else I was going to say. We also have the backing of the Washington State bond guarantee program. So our bonds are backed by the state as well, and their rating prevails over ours. And theirs is good too.
Great. Thanks, Gina.
Associated Student Body. This is a fund that's near and dear to my heart. Student government is central to the operation of this fund, and expenditures need to be of a cultural, athletic, recreational, or social vein. So CARS is an acronym that if you talk to any ASB treasurer out there in the state, they will know what that means. CARS. And the funds that support the student activities and athletics in there, the revenues are primarily from student body fees, activity gates receipts, fundraising, and donations. And again, the important piece of that is the student government, and that students are involved in the design of the budget, and that student approval is required for the use of ASB funds. Our debt service fund. This is primarily for principal and interest, servicing any outstanding debt that we have as a district. And the only outstanding debt that we have is for the bus debt that we issued, and for the bonds, the non-voted bonds that were issued previously, so that we could jumpstart our capital projects that are funded by the capital levy. So we are making the bond and interest payments, and they will flow through the debt service fund. We have to transfer money into there from the transportation vehicle fund to service the debt for the buses. And we transfer funds into there from the capital projects fund to service the debt that was borrowed to start the capital projects. And that is what is there. Okay. And then capital projects fund, this is for construction. And any resources in there, they cannot be spent on school operations. They have to be spent on capital projects related things. So we aren't able to dig into those funds to help us with our staff costs or anything like that. And we wouldn't look to that. But I say that because oftentimes people in the community may think that the capital projects fund is a fund that can be dipped into for that purpose, and it cannot. Okay, so capital projects, this is the main source of revenue for 22-23 is from our capital levy, the taxes that we'll be collecting from that. The expenditures are planned for projects as described in our capital levy, but where we're at in the project list is with the Kent Prairie Elementary site work for the student drop-off area, HVAC systems at Kent Prairie and Eagle Creek, and Weston High School. And then we have transfer out to debt service, like we just talked about the debt service fund. You can see that that is budgeted in the capital projects, the amount that we have to transfer out to the debt service fund for debt as it comes due. And then our transportation vehicle fund, as I spoke of before, the funds in this can only be used to purchase buses. And the funds that come into that are from the state depreciation schedule, basically meant to, over the course of time, fund us enough to replace a bus that maybe has dropped off the depreciation schedule once it reaches a certain age. So at this time, we are budgeting full capacity in that fund so that we can buy buses as needed. And we have budgeted 115,000 transfer to the debt service fund for a repayment of principal and interest due on the 1.2 million original issue back from 17-18. That allows us to not only replace buses that we're planning to replace in the coming year, but also if we have an accident, as sometimes happens, where a bus can get totaled, then we are able to go ahead and replace that bus and have the budget capacity to do so. And that is the end of our talk about the different funds. I'll talk a little bit quickly about the budget process timeline. We've just concluded my part as far as a presentation for a public hearing, and then Mary will administer for public comment. But then in our later part of the meeting, when we're talking about new business, that's when the budget resolution is put before the board for them to take action upon. And by law, the budget has to be adopted by August 31st. And then I will be submitting that to OSPI for them to approve. And it also will be posted on our website. And that is the end of my budget presentation for 22-23.
So this is the opportunity that the board has for student advisor to ask any questions to Gina about the budget.
If nobody else will go, then I do actually have a question. Just out of curiosity for the ASB student, do the student, I guess, governors of that fund, do they receive the kind of similar budget briefings that we do as a board?
I do not know that.
But maybe Gina will follow
I
up.
think that they approve their expenditures every meeting that they have. And yes, so I don't know how much detail their government cabinet provides, but their ASB treasurer would be in contact with them as well.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Great
that wasn't
question.
very specific.
Any other follow-up questions for Gina before I ask for the public to comment? Okay, so this is the part where I ask for public comment 3 times. It's really entertaining. Are there any questions or comments from audience members regarding this topic? If so, please raise your hand. Are there any questions or comments from audience members regarding this topic? Please raise your hand. Anyone online? And for the third and final question, are there any questions or comments from audience members regarding this topic? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing no hands raised online or in person, I declare the public hearing closed. The approval of the 22-23 annual budget is on the agenda tonight for board approval under new business. Thank you, Gina. Next up on our agenda is our consent agenda. That consists of our budget reports, our personnel report, payroll reports, warrants, our resolution 2210 for authorization of impressed accounts and change funds, minimum basic education requirement compliance, revised continuity of operations plan, and a contract with Snohomish County Human Services for the ECAP program for next year. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, can we please take a vote?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye. The consent agenda is now adopted. The first item of new business. Oh, there's one special thing we have to call attention to that was in our consent agenda on our personnel report, and we're going to make a little thing right now.
Yes, thank you, President Levesque. On the consent agenda, there was several people listed, but one of those individuals is here tonight. Her name is Angie Hansen, and she is now been approved to be officially the new assistant principal at Eagle Creek. So Angie, would you please stand and say a few words?
Make it official. I am so excited to be here in Arlington. I have lived in this community for almost 30 years, started my career here, and I'm hoping to finish my career here. So I am very excited. I have a wonderful principal to work with, and so far a great staff that I've started to meet. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Angie. We're glad you're here. And I know Bethany is as well.
Welcome aboard. Okay, so our first item of new business is our financial highlights of our current budget. And we'd like to bring back to the microphone. We'll bring back Gina Zutenhorst, our Executive Director of Financial Services, to talk about our current budget. Thank you, Gina.
Okay, so thank you. This is a standing item that is on a monthly basis, aligning with when our budget report is in the consent agenda. So we are done with June. Now everything's posted back. And so this is the month that aligns that I can talk to you about it in the board meeting. And so we've been through this, but
Miss Gina.
Yeah.
Can you grab
Oh,
the microphone? so
yes,
everybody
there we go.
at
Sorry
home-
about
Yeah,
that.
Thank you.
So we have been through these things together before, and this helps our board point to the strength of the financial communication that they have, the access to the information that they have, ability to ask questions, but also to have some of these main key points available to yourselves when people in the community also approach you and talk with you. So I apologize if you can now recite this by heart. Maybe that's a good thing. So 21-22 financial positives. We have a healthy fund balance to help sustain our operations. We have our 4-year educational programs and operations levy. Also very grateful for that. And our federal funds and enrollment stabilization relief really helped us this past fiscal year as well. We had ESSER 3 funds of 3.6 million. We had Department of Health Learn to Return grant of 490,000. And as I mentioned, we believe we are going to be getting about 2/3 of that for next year to help continue that. And then CARES Act emergency connectivity funds, that was over $750,000, and that was for technology equipment. So those are one-time funds, but they definitely helped us move the needle in replacement cycle, some of the things that we needed to continue to provide those tools. Enrollment stabilization was something that was provided by the legislature when they convened in April. So Arlington's piece of that was 1.7 million. And that is a financial strength and good for our district. We have our capital levy as well. So we've been able to continue those important projects to help renovate and modernize the facilities that we have and make them more secure, focusing on safety and replace some of the systems that need replacement in there. Financial health of the district. Then the other side of that is the financial challenges. And we've been talking about this. We just heard of me speak about the declining ending fund balance compared to prior years. And that we have staffing levels that were maintained at pre-COVID enrollment levels and infused with additional staff to meet the increased student needs and accelerate student learning. And enrollment is recovering at a slower pace than hoped. And a number of our programs have unique needs that are greater than the revenues that are generated by their associated funding models. We've talked about special education being one of those bigger areas where the funding is not sufficient. And yet we don't have a lot of choice in how those are administered. Child and nutrition services also is another area where that funding model has not propped that program up 100%. So continuing to experience costs associated with COVID-19 as well. And fund balance trend. We've been looking at this each month just to keep an eye on what does the fund balance usually do at this time of year. So I can tell you that it's at this level, but what does that mean in context with a normal year at this time of year? Because it'll bounce around depending on our revenues, which are greater in some months. You see in October, November-ish, that's when we receive the bulk of our property tax receipt. And then another time again in April, May, another big increase of our property taxes. So the fund balance bounces around from month to month. And as of June, it is at 12.2. No, sorry, we started at 12.2. As of June, it is at 7.1. So you see, we are on trend with where it usually goes down to, but we are lower than we have been in past years, which is also the signal of that we are headed in that direction. I do expect it to be back up for fiscal year end as the expenditures and revenues continue to be recorded. So of the local tax revenue that we budgeted for this year, we have collected 9 million of that. So pretty much 100% of what we budgeted, we have collected. Enrollment stabilization revenue, we had that come in at 1.7 million and that's been received. They told us we were getting it and we got it. Expenditures, 98% of our total budgeted expenditures have either been spent at this juncture or are obligated through purchase orders. So we're right up there on spending. Now, will we spend every dime of every purchase order that is out there right now? No, we will not. And yet for now, it's taking up the budget capacity. So if I do that calculation, we're about have obligated or spent 98% of our budget capacity. And again, our ending fund balance will be between, I estimate, between 9.8 and 10.2 billion. And our federal ESSER spending plan, we just always want to highlight what our plan was for spending for ESSER. And so we've got this pie chart and I will make it bigger, but the green area of this pie chart, 67%, and then 15%. Sorry, I'm trying to get my cursor over there, and 9%. School building instructional FTE staff was 67% of our ESSER spending. School building paraeducator FTE and staff was 15%. Counseling staff FTE and social emotional supports was another 9% of our planned spending. And then the other little slivers were to support nursing staff, additional nursing staff that we had, technology equipment and FTE staff there, affiliated with all that extra technology we were getting. Takes a lot of work to get that in place and ready to be used. And then summer school, very important piece of what we've used our ESSER funds for was tuition-free summer school for any who would want it. Recovery or what's the word? Yes. All right. So we're on track to have spent almost all of that funding by 21-22. It'll be pretty much exhausted, and we have some other smaller streams of ESSER funding that we've talked about that are budgeted for next year. We've always been looking at this OSPI financial indicators tool, and the estimate for 21-22. We believe our profile score is going to end up in about 2.45. This is a tool by OSPI that's developed to help districts be able to assess their financial condition. And they've developed this, there's weighted tools within that. So if I take all those factors and you can see our past, we've had a really strong score there, 3.1, 3.1, 3.15, 3.85, 3.7, but we're heading down. We're still strong. 21-22 will probably be at around the 2.45 for a score. But the 1.7 would be considered the cut score upon which you would be considered this district is on financial watch. So then they would have to have that plan to be changing those factors. And that's the financial highlights of our current budget.
Thank you, Gina. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, then we can move on to our next item on the agenda, which is also Gina, and that is our resolution 2209, our 22-23 district annual budget.
Okay, so we have gone through our public hearing, which is required by law. And then in our regular business portion, this is where the board considers actual adoption. And they do that through approval of a board resolution. And this is that board resolution. And there is the approval of expenditure capacity. And it is by fund. If you scroll down, that is the budget capacity for each of the funds. And it also allows for budget transfers that has to be called out specifically in the budget, or I'd have to do a separate budget resolution throughout the year as we did it for transfers. So each of those transfers is called out specifically in the budget resolution. And it is specifically only to service debt. So again, the budget does have to be approved by August 31st. And this would be the portion of the meeting where I would propose to the board for action the resolution for 22-23.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about this resolution?
President Levesque, since it's such an important thing that we do and we're absent 2 board members tonight, I'd like to move that we table this until a meeting that all the board members can be in attendance of.
Is there a second to postpone this important decision? Hearing no second to the motion to postpone this decision, we'll have to continue moving forward with this resolution. Do we have a motion to approve it?
I make a motion to approve the budget as indicated by Gina for 22-23.
And I'm assuming Mike's not going to second that. So then I will second that. Madam Clerk, can we please take a vote?
Director Ray,
Nay.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye. The motion to approve the resolution 2209, the 22-23 Arlington School District annual budget is approved. Thank you, Gina. The next item on our agenda is our report of donations approved by our superintendent, Dr. Sweeting.
Good evening. There's two donations that are unique during this last, and I would like to thank Matt Jurek, our new Director of Technology. He's with it and his team. First of all, they're just doing amazing things, and I appreciate that so much. But what they've done is these two donations are actually surplus from other district from another district. And so Matt and his team are very observant, and they've watched and they found surplus that we could use. And so really it was, we're saying it's a donation because we did not have to purchase it. So we received it, but it is it has value. So the first donation is of 50 Apple Magic keyboards and mice and various other things that are on a long list there. Just a lot of electronics there, valued at $3,300. The second donation is 25 late 2015 iMac computers, and that's valued at $4,375. And thank you, Matt. Thank you to you and your team for being observant and paying attention to that. So thank you.
You, Matt, and thank you for sharing, Dr. Sweeting. It's always great to be able to accept a donation. Next up on our agenda is our interlocal agreement with the City of Arlington for a school resource officer. And I'd like to introduce Brian Lewis, our Executive Director of Operations. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to take a moment here to get organized. I'm going to be here for a while.
You are pretty much the rest of the evening. You don't get to sit down.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, board. Nice to be here this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Tonight, we're going to be speaking about the renewal of the school resource officer interlocal agreement with the City of Arlington. Joining me tonight is Chief Jonathan Ventura from Arlington Police to help me with any questions you may have that I can't respond to. What we're going to talk about tonight is the supporting board policy that was attached to the board plate, the history of the SRO program in the school district. Chief Ventura is a former SRO with our school district as well. A couple of excerpts of some questions from the staff, or excuse me, the family and student survey that we did this year in the terms of the proposed agreement. All of these items were attached to your board agenda. There are several policies that are affected or that consider the school resource officer. School-based threat assessment, the district relationships with law enforcement and other government agencies, and then the school resource officer directly itself. That policy is likely going to be coming to you for a change later on this year because the state legislature expanded the scope of the RCW that is relative to school resource officers and added school security personnel in there as well, whether they're contracted or there are employees. We do have 3 school security personnel on staff. So those, we're going to have to do some work on policy regarding that. I can tell you right now, the school-based threat assessment policy was exercised more last year than in prior years. My colleague, Carrie, there's a Carrie HB and a Carrie H. I'm sorry. I'm having a little brain cramp here on the name. Sorry about that. But Carrie and I worked very closely with the school resource officer assigned to the school district this year on a number of threat assessments. So their interaction was vital to help us understand what it was that we were facing in terms of the student behavior, the unwanted student behavior, and how to respond to that. So it was a thorough exercise of that policy this year or last year. The SRO program in Arlington found its genesis in the drug abuse resistance education in 1990 through 1998. Were you here for that, Chief? Was that the time you were here? Okay. Then we had a full-on SRO program in 1999 at Arlington High School, expanding in 2003 to 2 SROs, one at Arlington High School, one at Post. There was a budget cut in 2006 that trimmed back the SRO for the school district to 1 in 2006. In 2013, we instituted a cost sharing arrangement with the city of Arlington to share the cost of the SRO. And then in 2014, we moved to 100% cost funded by the school district for the SRO. By way of information, one thing that makes this presentation of a new proposed interlocal more meaningful to us is that because of some staffing concerns that the city had this year, we had to relinquish the services, the full-time services of our SRO in April. And we're glad to hear that the city is able to bring forth another assigned staff member school resource for our school resource officer position. So we have been doing some survey work with the families and staff regarding their feelings about safety and school resource officers. So there's 2 questions from each survey grouping that I'm going to talk about here. We did have more questions in 2020-2021 survey, but that was trimmed back. We added questions elsewhere in the survey. So 2 questions relative to safety in the SRO. And you can see one of them right here. My child feels safe while on school grounds. The 2021 response for the combination of safe and very safe was 67.2%. The 2021-2022, that same combination is 72.6%. So we did see an increase in the perceptions regarding safety. I want to point out that the responses to both of these questions were very close to one another in terms of the number of responses that we received. That's going to be different with the student survey. You'll see that in just a moment. As far as perceptions of the community feeling, their students were unsafe or very unsafe on campus. It did increase from 2021, 3.1% total to 21-22 of 9.7%. And I just want to make sure that we put this in the right context, because that was around the time that our surveys were occurring shortly after the shooting at Uvalde at Robb Elementary. So that could have had an influence on the perceptions of safety. The family and community survey questions directly relative to the SRO. We did see an increase in the number of respondents. Oh, sorry. I just like those totals I gave you. I'm sorry, they were for the previous question. I'm going to give you totals for this question right now. Safe and very safe versus or for 2021 and 21-22. Again, there was an increase between the 2 years of community perception of safety on campus, and there was a small increase in the community perception of unsafe and very unsafe. As far as the impact of the school resource officer on the perception of safety at the campus. So the community has support, or they feel safer according to our survey questions. This is not a scientific survey. It's not random sample. It's almost anecdotal in nature, but the perception of the community that we find in the survey is that there is a feeling of safety brought about by the presence of the SRO. So students, again, I want to point out the difference in the number of responses we received in 2021. We received 291 responses. In 2022, we received 1,314. So quadrupling the number of responses across the 2 years. As far as the students' perception of feeling safe on campus, 21, it was for agree and strongly agree they felt safe. It was 79.7%. 21, 22, that perception dropped to 68%. And then as far as strongly agree or disagree and disagree that they felt safe on campus, it increased from 21 from in 21 it was 10.2%. In 22 is 20.5%. Again, there's two factors at work here. One of them is the larger universe of responses that we received and the timing, coincidental timing with the shooting in Texas. Now, as far as the perception of safety lent to us by NSRO being on campus, the percentage of students who said they felt safe or very safe with an SRO on campus in 21, it was 55%, 22, 64%. So almost a 9% increase there in the number of students that felt safe while on campus with an SRO. Unsafe and very unsafe, 21, it was 9.6%, 22, it was 10.4%, a slight increase. But we can also see at the same time, we're seeing a drop in the don't knows as far as the presence of the SRO on campus. So these are positive movements, I believe, and the idea that, that the SRO does contribute to a safe atmosphere on campus and in the minds of the students. Our current agreement is expired. It expired in June. We've got a new agreement that we brought to you tonight. The Arlington Police provides one school resource officer on campus for 180 days. That's the entire school district. That's not just Arlington High School. Our SRO is involved in every school building in the district. It does comply with the district policies and RCW. Sam Chalfant from Pacifica Law prepared this agreement. It's already been presented to the city of Arlington Legal. They bought up on it. So we're, from that standpoint, from a policy procedure standpoint, we're in good shape. The duration of the agreement would be from September 1st, 2022 through the last day of school. I put June 30th. I mean, we're not going to, hopefully not going to be ending on June 30th, but it's a little bit open-ended because there's snow events that occur that could push our scheduled closing date out past what's on the calendar right now. Okay, so I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'm going to hope that our student advisor has some really great questions or thoughts or comments.
So going back to the number of responses from grades 6 to 12, do you know what percentage of that came from specifically the high school? Because I know that we were prompted to give a response this year rather than last year we weren't.
Gary, would you happen to know that? How many students at the middle school level versus the high school level responded to? I think, did go ahead.
So we had a big increase at the high school levels, both at Arlington High School and Weston. They did it at advisory during the high school, and then Weston, they did it at their whatever they call advisory at Weston. But yeah, so the principals really supported the survey results. The middle schools, I think, were fairly comparable to what they were the previous year.
Thank you.
And there are more students at the high school level than there are at the middle school level as well. And we expect to see way more response and way more awareness at the high school level as far as the SRO goes, since they do have an office in that building. They are there quite a bit.
Any further questions? Thank you for asking a question, Kyle. Director Ray, do you have any questions or comments? Director Kelly? Brian, what are you doing to help all of our students feel safer? Can you talk about some of the activities and programs to increase that feeling of safety and security?
So as far as the SRO goes, we really do need to do more work in terms of making sure that the students know who the SRO is and what their role is. As far as safety and security goes and other areas, this year we're going to be focusing with the staff. We've revised the response to emergencies. I shared that with you last month. We're also going to be working with them on pretty basic security related issues like not propping doors, the need for wearing identification. As far as communicating that to students and making sure that they understand that they shouldn't be doing these things either, not letting people into the building that are not wearing identifying badge or not propping doors. That's an ongoing work that we have to rely on teachers to pass that information on them and the school administrators as well. So I'm going to be working pretty closely with the school administrators at the start of this school year to reinforce the basic security principles that we've got in place. One thing I do know is that when we installed the A phones at the entryways to schools, many students came to the administration at the school buildings and expressed how much safer they feel knowing that those doors are locked. And it's going to be even more improved this school year. One of the things that we'll be doing on August 24th and 25th with Eagle Days is providing a self-guided tour for students and families. And part of that is going to be talking about the revised secure entryway at the front of the buildings and the purpose that it serves and how it operates. And hopefully that will again increase or reinforce the idea that we're concerned about the student safety and well-being while they're in our building and at all times, honestly.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
This is an action item, so I would entertain a motion to approve the agreement with the City of Arlington for the school resource officer services as presented.
I make a motion, we approve what is it called? The interlocal agreement with City of Arlington for school resource officer.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the interlocal agreement with the City of Arlington for the school resource officer. Madam Clerk, can you take a vote?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye. So the agreement is approved. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And thank you, Chief Ventura, for being here in case you had any questions. We appreciate you. Next up, it's also Brian Lewis in our milk bid dairy value distributing. Nothing is too little to discuss. I didn't see strawberry milk on that list. See, there's opinions about strawberry milk. I know there is. But I didn't see any strawberry milk on the list, Brian.
Sorry, we don't offer strawberry milk. Chocolate and white. Every year we acquire large amounts of dairy products to serve with our school meals. In the past, we've had a relationship through an interlocal agreement with Cedro-Woolley School District has been the lead agency on that agreement for both milk and bread bakery products. We had that same arrangement last year with Cedro-Woolley, and then 2 months into the school year, the vendor with the consortium selected withdrew from the agreement. So we were put in a bit of a pickle in terms of trying to find a vendor And we were lucky enough that we did find a vendor. So this year we had to conduct a procurement process in order to locate a new vendor and acquire costs, projected costs from that vendor before awarding any kind of contract. So we did that this summer. And what you see on the screen is the one of the documents that they submitted to us in terms of their bidding document. It's the only bid that we received for the products, and there is a small increase in costs associated with these products, about 4.5 cents maximum per pint or per half pint for the chocolate or white milk that we serve during school meals. We also buy some other dairy products through this bid, gallons of milk that we use in preparing scratch cooking. The other dairy products that we use, like butter or sour cream, we acquire that through US Foods, which is another vendor that provides lots of fresh foods for us. So we're asking that you approve this this agreement with Dairy Valley as it's presented. And if you have any questions, I might have to defer to Ed Aylesworth. Yes, this is he's got the best knowledge about this, but I'd be happy to attempt to answer anything.
Hey, Brian, is it not available through our normal vendor, US Foods?
It is. It's just that the service that we get from Dairy Valley will be twice a week instead of once a week. So we'll be more likely to get a fresher product, more fresh. All the product that we serve is within tolerances in terms of service, but we're more likely to get a fresher product with twice a week deliveries. Plus the delivery schedule that Dairy Valley could provide. It's earlier in the day, so there's less happening. This complex, President's Kitchen back here, gets a lot of activity with vendors delivering food products. Dairy Valley delivers at night, so there's less competition for space in the area that they're providing when they're doing their delivery. Not the case with US Foods.
Would you have any idea what the cost difference would be between US Foods and Dairy Valley?
I do not, but they didn't submit a bid. Only Dairy Valley did.
Does that mean we can't buy it from US Foods, or they just didn't bid this specific proposal?
We can buy if Dairy Valley does not meet our needs. We can buy from US Foods. We're not precluded from doing that.
We just don't know what the cost would be.
No. And it's going to be, it'll be a market rate, whatever that market rate is on the day we make the purchase.
I hate to ask to venture a guess. Would you guess that the market rate would be higher or lower than our bid rate?
I would think it's going to be higher. And because these guys, if they know that they're going to get a specific quantity, they'll change their cost for us to achieve that, to acquire that business.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't have any further comments.
You have no more milk
No more milk comments. No.
presentation? Does our student advisor have any questions about milk?
I do not. I think I am all clear on milk at the moment.
All right, this is a action item. So I would entertain a motion to accept the proposed milk bid from Dairy Valley Distributing.
I make a motion, we accept the bid from Dairy Valley Distributing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the proposed milk bid from Dairy Valley Distributing. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye. Next up, don't go
you.
anywhere, Brian. It's going to be
No, I'm not leaving.
our contract for electrical surface improvements at the Transportation Center. And I was hoping that you have visual aids for this one.
I do. But it's going to take me a moment if you could let me find them. I don't.
Do we need to take a brief break? Is everybody doing okay?
I'm gonna stop my screen share for just a moment. Okay.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. I'm glad you find it like that. I find it terrifying. So we're going to be presenting to you a couple of contracts tonight. One of those contracts is for, well, two of them are specific to the transportation bus barn. One of them is for some work at the bus barn, doing revising the electrical service, improving the electrical service at the building. But that is triggered by the need to replace the roof over the garage. And this image here is a perfect encapsulation of the need for this. One thing that this image does not communicate to you is how close all of this electrical wiring is to the roof of the building. Codes have changed, building codes have changed. You can see that there's a lot of different wiring connections that have occurred over the years since we've owned this building. Some may have been to code, some were not to code, but we definitely, in order to accomplish the re-roof, need to change the location in which the electrical service enters the building. It enters through a penetration in the roof right now. We want to move the electrical service to the side of the building so that there's no longer a penetration in the roof, and that it's at a distance far enough away from the roof surface in order to safely apply the new roofing that we're going to be proposing to you in a contract that follows. We conducted a small works roster solicitation process in July. We received the lowest responsive bid from Milne Electric out of Lake North Shore, I believe. That's where they're located. Their proposal was $78,000. The architect's estimate for the work was $60,000. It is more expensive than what we thought it was going to be, but on the plus side, they actually have access to the materials that they can get this work done. Electrical panels are in very short supply right now. They're very difficult to acquire. This contract would allow us to get this work done before December of 2023 or 2022. Part of this is also triggered by our lease agreement with the city of Arlington for that property that requires improvements to the property. This one is most appropriate because the roof is an important part of that structure, and the electrical services is as important or more so than the roof, and they're all interrelated to one another. We need a safe space for our employees to work, and we need to live up to our obligations with the city of Arlington. So tonight we brought to you a contract that was attached to the board agenda. We're asking for approval of that contract. And this is just for the electrical. I'll show you a picture of the roof in just a moment, and I have some words to say about that as well.
Any questions about the electrical service improvement? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the contract for electrical service improvements at the transportation center.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye. The board approves the contract for the electrical service improvements. So the next item of new business is our contract for the replacement of the roof at the transportation center.
So here's another image that's representative of the current condition of the roof on that building. This was the replacement of the roof was actually called out in the 2014 master facilities plan. At that point in time, we didn't have any resources to cover the cost of this. Now we do have resources available to us to cover the cost of it. We conducted a public bid process that ended last week, last Tuesday, and we received multiple bids for this project, more than we were expecting, that ranged from the lowest responsive bid, which we presented today, to upwards of $380,000 for the replacement of the roof. The bid that we received that we're asking you to approve a contract for was from Jimmy's Roofing, which has an office. I think it's in Bellevue, but they're a statewide contractor. They have offices all over the state. We checked their references. They came out positive. Their bid was $256,892. And the estimate for the replacement of the roof, that the architect's estimate was $250,000. So very close to what we were expecting in terms of roof replacement. So this is part, again, is also an obligation through our lease arrangement with the city of Arlington to improve the site periodically. This is a no-brainer. This is easy for us to make this, to do this work, and it's meaningful in a lot of ways. So again, these guys have access to the material that was specified by the architects, which is no small feat in these times. And we believe that they'll be able to help us get this work done by the end of November in time for renewal of the lease arrangement with the city in December.
Brian, I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
How many square feet is the roof and what exactly does it cover?
Oh, boy. So I'm going to have to refer to the project manual to get that information, which I have.
Ballparking, even just curious. I can't tell from the picture. I'm just curious.
Oh, well, this is only a very small section of the roof. There's probably 8,000 square feet underneath this roof.
And what goes under that?
What's under there is insulating material.
I guess I meant specifically, are the buses under
Oh,
this?
no, we don't store buses in there. Underneath the roof is 4 service bays. 2 of them have lifts installed. 1 does not have a lift, and 1 is used for some maintenance work, like our oil changes, our regular maintenance work that we do in that building. There's also a tire storage area, and then a part storage area, 2 levels. There's a mezzanine up above that. And then there's mechanics offices in there and bathrooms.
So basically all school motorized vehicles are attended to in this facility.
Yes.
And one other thing, we're leasing this building from the city of Arlington.
Yes. Yes, we
own it
are.
outright.
The lease arrangement is accomplished in 5-year pieces, 5-year time spans. We renewed the lease for a 20-year period in 2017, and it's going to, with 5-year increments where we both have an opportunity to either renew or not renew. And we're coming up on another one of those in December of this year. This facility, we also sublease part of it to Petrocard, which is a fuel provider. It's about a quarter of the space. In return for that, we get easy access to diesel and gasoline for our operations. And we also get some lease revenue from that arrangement that helps offset the cost of our lease.
It's very interesting. Thank you. Any other questions?
A few details on the lease arrangement. And we're re-roofing the building for the leaseholder. How do we expect to recoup our financial expenditure over the next number of years?
So the benefit from that is that we get to stay there. And that's about it. We don't get any kind of recoupment. So we're, in terms of the transportation facility, the options that we've got available to us is that we stay there, or we don't have a transportation center, or we build our own. Marysville built their own transportation facility about 8 years ago, and it was $15 million. It also requires that it be the property where it would be located would be appropriately zoned. So it would be quite a lift to build our own transportation center.
Understood. And then I see in the company document that SNS Roofing actually was a lower bid, but they weren't responsive. What parts were they not responsive?
So they didn't submit a bid security or bid bond when they submitted their bid, and they also did not use the form that is required to submit the bid on, and everybody else did. So if we were to accept their bid for missing either one of those 2 points, we would be subjected to a bid protest process and likely not prevail. Go ahead.
And are you at liberty to say how much lower their bid was?
It was $25,000 less.
Seems like a pretty good savings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The alternative is that we would be facing not only a bid protest that we wouldn't be able, or that we wouldn't prevail in, but it would keep us from being on schedule to get this work done before the end of this calendar year. They understood, and they were grateful for the opportunity to participate in the process. SNS was.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Brian? Okay, this is an action item. Do we have a motion to approve the contract?
I make a motion, we approve the contract for the replacement of the roof at the transportation center.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye. So the contract for the roof at the transportation center is approved. Next up is the contract for replacement of 2 light poles at Haller Middle School Stadium, and that will also be presented by Brian Lewis.
Okay. So no pictures here, but something that may be as equally compelling. In February, we had a inspection of the facilities at the Haller Stadium, including the stands and the light poles around the stadium that that provide light, or at least a place to mount the lights. And we got some bad news. Part of that bad news was that 2 of the poles were no longer able to provide service for us. The inspector rejected them, and what they do is they drill in to the pole and then pull out a core sample and look at that core sample for indicators of rot or brittleness. And they found that on 2 of the poles. You can see that the poles that are in question here were installed in 1955. All 4 poles were there, installed in 1955. 2 of them remain in service, and 2 of them were rejected. So we were faced with a decision of replacing the poles or not. That facility is not only used by our curricular program at Haller Middle School, but it's also used by the community quite extensively for field sports. So we're bringing forward to you a request to approve a contract to replace the poles. Again, we conducted a small works solicitation process. We received 1 bid. It was a very positive bid, in that it was $49,241. Which is $80,000 less than what the contractor, what the architect had projected. This will allow us to light that field and to allow community members and students onto the field without concern that the poles are going to fall over on them.
Excuse me for a second, Brian. Does anybody else see the letter that accompanies that in there, or is it? It appears that it's the same transportation electrical bid PDF document for the 2 light poles as it is for item F.
That is correct. I do have a letter from McGranahan endorsing this proposal, though. So,
I don't see it in tonight's agenda, but you probably have it separately.
well, I realized that we made a mistake.
Oh, understood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do have it, though. There it is right there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any chance you can make it smaller? I'm kidding.
There we go. Can you guys not see this on the screen in front of you?
I don't believe most of us are logged into Zoom
Okay,
on,
okay.
we're using the OWL.
So Salish Construction is a firm well-known to McGranahan. They had no problems recommending Salish. I would have liked to have seen more bids, but Salish was one that showed up, and they did submit a competitive bid, and they assure us that they have access to the poles that we need. Apparently, there's only 2 providers of poles that in this state now. Used to be a lot more, and they've got the poles held for us. It's a company called Stella, which is the name of the pole provider, and they've got that pole waiting for us, or those 2 poles waiting if we approve the contract.
And Brian, this only replacing the 2 that didn't pass inspection. We're not doing all 4.
Yeah.
And what kind of lighting? I'm guessing, are these like an LED? I'm guessing.
No,
No?
they're not. No,
okay.
I think it's sodium halide is the kind of light. It's an old system. And we had proposed replacing the track and the lighting and the grandstands at that field in a prior bond proposal. And that's something that, the Facilities Advisory Committee will have to take up in the coming year as to what we want to do with facilities in the future. This is a Band-Aid, and it's keeping the place safe and allowing us to use the field without concern that one of those fields, one of those light structures is going to act like a sail and blow over and snap the pole.
Any further questions?
Sorry, I didn't show that. You didn't see that screen. I was just blown away that those poles were placed in 1955, and that's 70 years. Yeah.
Right, this is an action item. Do we have a motion to approve the contract to replace the 2 light poles at Haller Middle School Stadium?
I make a motion. We approve the contract for replacement of light poles at Haller Middle School Stadium.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye. Thank you, Brian, for your very informative, helpful presentation tonight.
Thanks.
Next up, you get to tell us about the capital facility plan update.
So we're going to shift gears here and talk, and instead of talking about spending money, we're going to talk about accruing money, making money. And one of the ways that we can do that is through a legislatively defined plan called a capital facilities plan. And I just want to make a distinction here in that the capital facilities plan is a different creature than the master facilities plan, which is a document that we generate internally that does not have the same kind of legislative boundaries placed on it that the capital facilities plan does. The capital facilities plan is called out in the State's Growth Management Act, and it provides a pathway for schools to offset the cost of facilities by collecting impact fees from builders of residential structures like single-family homes or multifamily homes or townhomes and duplexes. So the plan was attached to the document. I presented a draft to you in June. The contents of the plan include a future enrollment forecast. We had in the past, we had a gentleman from Port Townsend that provided enrollment forecasts or student generation rates is what it's called. The document is called from for all the districts in the Snohomish County region that work with Pacifica Law. That gentleman retired last year. We switched over to Flow Analytics, which you can see their document is included attached to the capital facilities plan. They provided the similar information for, so that is one change from prior years. The other components of the plan include inventory of our facilities, both educational and service or support, a financing plan. The financing plan is a guess. It may reflect what actually happens, but it really reflects more what we would like to see happen as much as anything else. And then a calculation of the fees that we are eligible to collect. So we reinstituted the capital facilities plan process in 2019. Since that time, we've collected $920,454. Those funds are still held in our capital projects fund. We have not had projects in 2020 that were used to address enrollment growth other than the high school addition. And we're fully supported in that by the capital levy and the state matching funds that we're going to receive for that. Because you can use this money to acquire sites, pieces of land for instructional buildings, portable classrooms, and all the things that you need to put into the ground to support a classroom, like electrical, sewer, or water, or you can use them to acquire a building constructed on site. The items with the green check mark are either completed or underway following board approval of the plan. We notify the city of Arlington that we've adopted the plan, and then the process continues through the Snohomish County Council as well. The city of Arlington, their plan is a little more lengthy, or their process is a little more lengthy in that it's included in the Planning Commission docket that's taken up in January of the following year. So any changes that we see right now that affect the city really don't take place until July of next year, because it's a 6-month process from the time the Planning Commission takes it up before the city council hears it. So with the county, though, it's a little bit different. Whatever changes that we propose in the plan, they take effect in January of the following year. We are still eligible for impact fees, slightly more for single-family residents than we had in the past, and slightly less for multifamily residents than we had in the past. Part of this is driven by the number of students that each type of structure generates. So the student generation rate, the more students that are generated by that type of structure that attend our schools, increases the fee that can be collected to support future construction. So I'm going to share, this is what the updated facilities, or excuse me, impact fees are for other districts in the county. So of course, we're at the top showing our current rate lined out and a new proposed rate bolded and underlined next to it. We do not collect any fees for 1 bedroom or less residences, multifamily residences. That's like a studio apartment or a 1 bedroom apartment. We do collect fees for a single family home or multifamily of 2 bedrooms or more. So you can see by looking across the different range of fees, we're not the lowest, but we're definitely not the highest.
Brian, can I ask a question about that?
Yes,
Who sets these impact fees?
the builder pays them when they get issued a permit.
So why is it so high in North Shore and so low in Snohomish and so high in Sultan? How does that get determined?
Part of that has to do with what kind of financing they've got available to them. If they've got a bond issue outstanding, that really does change their eligibility. So North Shore must not have bonds to meet their facilities needs. They may have a bond they're paying from a prior issue that met a facilities needs at the time that the bond was issued, but not now. So that's how they become eligible, is by having a need that's not funded by another methodology. Yeah, so they must have, you know, an incredible amount of unhoused students from single family homes. So I imagine that they've got big classrooms that need to be corrected through the issuing a new bond to build a new facility. You can see Sultan is the same way. Yeah. So this is in the scale of fees that are being collected in the county here. Lakewood and Marysville are obviously, and Edmonds are way down there. They don't. Okay. So, any questions that I could answer? Then that we're asking you to approve the capital facilities plan as it's presented, and we'll move it up to Snohomish County and in the city of Arlington following.
Any questions? Entertain a motion to approve the capital facilities plan as presented.
I move we approve the capital facilities plan.
A second.
Madam Clerk.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye. That is approved. Thank you, Brian,
Thank
for
you.
your multitudinous presentations tonight. Next up on our agenda is our informational items. And the first thing is our superintendent's report. Dr. Sweeting.
I wanted to share that this week on Wednesday and Thursday, the district leadership team will be meeting for 2 days to engage in professional development and to set the stage, get started, and for the new school year. So just wanted to share that. And the board has a workshop, all-day workshop that's scheduled next Monday. And it'll be opportunity for the board to engage in professional learning as well next Monday. Also, I wanted to share that today, Gina, besides doing the budgeting, she was accomplishing one of the district improvement plan goals today because she was up at the high school, Arlington High School, and doing training for the new receipting software, which has been long coming. I mean, it's been a process. So thank you, Gina, for that. And another thought is that it's coming soon at the end of September. October 1st is the WASDA General Assembly. And I was talking with President Levesque before the board meeting that every school district gets one vote at this general assembly. So we're hoping that all of us are welcome to go. As a board, it's free. It's virtual. Attendance free, but there'll be one person that can give vote on the items that they talk about. So I just wanted to give a heads up for that. I wanted to also share that, we've been very grateful, and it's been great to have all the meals paid this last couple of years. It's in fact on the voices from our community that it's one of the top positives, but unfortunately the waiver is going away. And so the no-cost meals will end this September. So I just wanted to give the board a heads up on that. There still will be available the opportunity for people to apply for free reduced. And we do need to work on that to make sure that because it can be cumbersome. That process can be cumbersome. The other thing is the district day is scheduled for August 31st, and we have a special guest speaker. Her name is Erin Jones. And Erin has been, shared this with staff in an email recently last week, that she's been involved in education and around education for over 25 years. She was also received recognition at the White House in 2013 as a champion of change and was Washington State's PTA Outstanding Educator in 2015. She was the first Black woman to run for any state office in Washington State in 2012. And so she's coming to help us or to share with us how we can be our best selves and to increase our culturally responsive practices. And we've seen her. She was at the annual conference, the WASDA, so we have seen her, and she's very inspirational. And so we're looking forward to that. And finally, my last item is that the new guidance from the Department of Health came out. Pretty much there are still requirements. One of the requirements is that all staff must be vaccinated, all volunteers, all indoor contractors, unless they would seek a religious or medical exemption. So we're working through that. There's some others, many things are still the same that we ended the year with, but we got it on Friday and we're digging into that some more. So just want to let the board know that's here.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeting. Next up is our legislative update. Director Kelly, do you have anything to share?
I don't. Legislature's on break, so no updates right now.
Thank you. And then do we have any comments from any board members?
I can start it off. I would just like to say congratulations to Mariska for being sworn in. It's very exciting. I know I did it about a year ago. And I think I speak for all of us when we say that we're very lucky to have you, and we look forward to working with you in the next 2 years.
Thank you, Kyle. And appreciate you meeting with her already and getting her up and running with all the information she needs. Appreciate that. Director Kelly, do you have any comments?
Nothing right now. Thank you.
Director Ray? All right, I want to wrap up this meeting. But first, I want to share two things. We have our next meeting is going to be the board all-day workshop. Like Dr. Sweeting mentioned, is on Monday, August 15th at 8:15 a.m. And then we also have a regular board meeting on Monday, August 22nd at 6 p.m. here in the district office boardroom. And before we adjourn, we get to go to executive session. And so we will recess this meeting so that the board may convene in an executive session to review the performance of an employee. I estimate that the executive session will last approximately 15 minutes, during which time no final action will be taken. And then following the executive session, this special meeting will be reconvened for the sole purpose of adjournment. So you're welcome to stick it out so that we can all say goodnight together, or you're free to leave. But we will now recess this meeting and move into executive session. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all busted up. Easy. I'll have it for you. I might need a gentle reminder. you tomorrow. Brenda, I sent you the. Okay. Yep.
Oh, Brenda and I figured that out yesterday, the other day. Probably move a few things back into the office. Yeah, but I don't always have time. So it's just, yeah. She got the 11, but she didn't go to the could have been trying to watch the so There's still someone that maps. I think I need file. Yeah. Things to it. So, so tomorrow, I think that may the doctor said we could do that, but we didn't have time to do that. I don't feel it. And so we don't have to do any of that. We didn't have to do any typing. We didn't have to wait for any people. You know, we don't have to put the file together. And we pull it out. And see anything. That's going in, anything in my absolutely, like, We'll have to flag it. But I have got to sign them first, and then. Yeah, oh, we even have to have.
Yeah. So you're right on time.
I shut all the computers down. Figured you guys didn't need them coming back.
Welcome back from executive session. The board has returned from executive session for the sole purpose of adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye. Have a good night.
Good night.